gentlemen, thank you for joining us for another episode of Gran Turisbros. My co-host Eddie the Wardez Gomez, broadcasting from beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada, on the other end of that microphone. Myself, Tristan Roadbeef Bayless. This is the last episode before our show is a teenager. Join us for episode 12. So you were just recently in New York City, weren't you?
Yeah, for this part of the podcast, we're going to be talking about some New York World Tour information, experiences, how life was like for the very first event of its kind for GTSport. It was awesome. I got invited as one of the members of staff. I worked kind of as a steward, sort of like more of like a marshal sort of situation without the flags. So they asked me to go like maybe a month before the event was going to go down in late August, and yeah, I couldn't say yes fast enough. That was a great message to get, because I had already kind of, it was pretty close to the time when I had, after stage one had ended and I was feeling kind of down, like, oh, it's going to be so tough to try to go to any of these events. And then I was given a little, let's give a little something to a little, prize. What do you call it? Blanking. Yeah, consolation prize. Yeah.
Well, it's a gift that must have been not just, any old random thing, but they had to have had a modicum of trust to offer it to you.
For sure. I was very grateful. So that was cool. I started getting ready mentally. I was like, man, I'm going to learn all about, the systems and behind the scenes, and I got to be ready and prepared. I got to have a notebook. I got to, start writing stuff down as soon as I hit the ground. But it was a lot more chill back than that, so I kind of over prepared mentally, but that's fine. It put me in a good place. I had a lot of experience, or I do have experience in like the live kind of events world, doing the work that I do, so I was able to swim into the stream a little more naturally, which is cool. But yeah, I was just excited to meet, because the only other live event I've been to is, Las Vegas Regional Finals for FIA Nations Cup last year, where we both had a lot of fun and had a little disappointment, but it was still really cool meeting everyone. That was a highlight for sure. And so I'm looking forward to this World Tour. I was just pumped to be like a fangirl, be like, oh my God, there's Mikhail. There's, that's the French guy, one of many.
French guy.
There's a Spanish. I know Manny Rodri. I know.
Yep.
Coque.
Yep. Coque, the announcer favorite. Solid.
Yeah.
Guy. Hey, I'm wondering. So, you were asked to be kind of like a marshal, quasi steward. When you were given the invite, did you prepare as? Were you wanting to be like a strict sort of a rule upholder, or were you sort of more loose and fast? Would you say that you were siding with officiants, or more so with participants? Were you kind of like an intermediary? What sort of was your position?
Yeah, well, I was trying to play a very, in a fair way, just trying to stay impartial. I started preparing, and the way I started doing it was I was going back and looking at some incidents that I had judged on in previous leagues that I've been a part of. I was looking at the history of, mainly Formula One, like brushing up on racecraft and racing etiquette, and just doing that kind of textbook cramming sort of thing. And but without, I asked a few questions. I didn't have people like the stewards that were actually going to be there that I knew were going to be mainly in charge. I didn't have access to them, so I was assuming a lot. So I started getting prepared and like to take on the whole task of trying to be a steward. But then I talked to JT Lauro, who is just one of the nicest people ever, and he let me know like, yeah, it'll be pretty chill. It's just you'll be there to help where you can, sort of thing. So after I found that out, I was resting a bit more easily, and I was ready to just sort of fall in where I would need to be. So yeah, it was fun. Showed up. There wasn't like they didn't hand you like they just forwarded the briefings that the competitors got, and so you read through that. You learned the structure of the event itself. Made sure you were familiar with that, and then just went from there. And you helped out where you can, because what I learned, the main thing is that I had kind of run into during this behind the scenes experience was that things are they're really flexible as far as the structure goes in terms of figuring out the best way to do things. They definitely put a ton of thought into the structure on a macro level, and in terms of the whole scope of the thing. They put a lot of thought, like everything's set out in meetings that they've had a long time ago. But as far as how things are running during the event itself, things pop up that you don't expect are going to be an issue, like people's faces being people having light hitting their faces too harshly, and each competitor dealing with it in a different way, and some guys are really insistent on like wanting a hat or something, and then they're having to take the hats away, and so guys like Lester.
Yep.
Dude, Mark Canal, Turismo Lester.
That was classic and ingenious, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, you have the light is harsh. You had the hat, right? The thing that happened, one of the guys got away with it because they just didn't catch it, but the next time the next time being Mark, aka Turismo Lester, he was in the rig, and then they, for whatever reason, noticed his hat, and they told him not to wear it because it had branding on it, and that was the issue. It wasn't like they don't want anyone to not have a hat on. It's just the branding. So
you're saying if I have like a Puma hat or a Gran Turismo hat, it might fly? Possibly.
Maybe. I can't confirm that because they may just try to, when stuff like that happens in the future, it's a lot easier to handle stuff by just banning the thing altogether. Right. If you're going to have an approval process, it's going to slow stuff down. So
I hear that. And I bet that something like even as simple as a hat to block the light from your eyes, if it's 1 out of 12 competitors that has it, the others might be like, oh, that's an unfair advantage. Why can't we have a hat? And then you've got a whole new problem on your hands.
Exactly.
I hear that.
And the biggest thing was helping the guys that are new to the experience. We had a few 18-year-olds like Hara, Jara, Relegado. It was his first time there at an event. Sorry. So you help guys like that, and then other dudes that have done them, consecutive, like it's their fifth one or whatever. Those guys are just super chill, know exactly what to do. They just need to be told like maybe where their rig is, because it's a little tough to see. But the other thing being, they needed help with the intercom system sometimes, because there was a dedicated team for it, but sometimes they would be unavailable. So I would just jump in because I know the comm systems pretty well, and yeah.
I've got a question for you. So in Las Vegas last year, there were a couple of moments between the first day and the second day where the participants were kind of suddenly shuffled out of the way because the production crew needed to run a rehearsal of the announcers and the presenters walking through a particular corridor and saying particular phrases and sort of introducing a segment of the show. Were you involved in those sort of rehearsals? Did you have like any part to play with that?
No, in this environment, it was better. It was definitely better suited compared to Vegas because you had a lot more room. It was an actual theater, so they had plenty of room to do rehearsals on stage, and that allowed everyone else to be able to do stuff on the rigs. But if to bring you guys kind of into where I was at mentally, I'll set the stage a little bit. I'll give you a little play-by-play on how I had the whole thing happen, right? So I show up, I fly on a plane over to New York. It's I get there early morning on Thursday. This is August 22nd, and they just told me, show up to the hotel, go to the specific suite in the hotel to meet up with the stewards and to meet with everyone else. All the competitors were there. Some of the guys had been there since Wednesday night. So as soon as I get to the airport, though, I go into my shuttle and Julia Hardy is in there. Julie is the host of, the awesome blonde host of the whole thing since the beginning. Super funny. She's just like her on-air and off-air personality is the same. So it's always great to see her. And she had been waiting in the shuttle for a long time. So she was in an interesting mood. She was kind of like, let's hurry up and get to New York kind of thing, because we were in JFK. But then who else was on the shuttle? Super GT and Matt Gallagher from WTF1. So it was cool getting to meet Super GT. He's super chill, man. He
seems like a cool guy.
Really cool dude. Really good at what he does. I mean, it was cool getting to see all his gear and the way that he shoots B-roll or whatever. He's just on it, man. He's like a one-man production company, and he's really good. So, and also on board, the French commentator and the British commentators. What's his name? Can't believe his name's slipping me right now.
Jimmy, possibly.
Jimmy Broadbent, yes.
Yep.
He was on there with us. And also Christian, one of the stewards, who has been with PDI for a while, and he had Kit Kats, so that was awesome. Great start. He was handing out Kit Kats. So we
schmoozer.
head over. It was like an hour and a half to get from JFK through Queens into New York City, Times Square, where we were staying. Super cool getting to go through the city like that with the huge windows, and we were all tripping out. We get to the hotel. I meet up with some of the competitors, and then I take off because Thursday was the only day where I really had time to explore the city on my own. Everything else was scheduled after that, so I just took off, went to Central Park, hung out, went to Strawberry Fields, and went to Made in New York Pizza to have a bunch of pizza. It was a pizza apocalypse. That was my main thing. Just eating tons of pizza and bagels. My goal was to stay away from anything franchised or corporate, and for the most part I succeeded, except for one low light, which I'll talk about later.
The low lights are probably always indulgences.
Yes, it was very indulgent. It was cool though. That was a different thing altogether. I was hanging out with the Turismo guys, but yeah. So after everything was, after I had my fun on Thursday, then it was time to get to bed and wake up early for the first briefing, because Friday was qualifying day and all of that. So I wake up, we go downstairs, I go to this suite where all the drivers are at and all the other staff, and that's where I first encountered the whole thing with black shirts. And there's now this distinction. I don't quite remember it being this way last year, but there's people that have the same kind of Puma shirts as the competitors. So the competitors wear these, what are now like a trademark GTSport red Puma jersey kind of deal, right? And so the staff has the same thing, just black. And we also have cool sweet jackets, which I will cherish forever. They're black, like cool little jackets. So I went into this. They told us, hey, grab a shirt out of the cardboard box. So I did that, and then I listened into the.
How elegant.
Yeah. Then I listened in on the discussion, and then Ken was like, "Hey, let's get a jump on these guys. We'll go to the theater and bring some. You can help me bring some swag over there." So we had cool, like, personalized, or not personalized. It was swag that was just for the media attendees. People like Super GT, the YouTubers that were invited, the like Drive Tribe people, which was cool. It was great to meet all of those people. So we went to the theater, and the theater was awesome, just down the street, right near Times Square, underneath the MTV studios. Huge theater, lots of setup chaos, as I'm used to seeing in my trade. It was interesting getting to see it in New York. And yeah, from then on, it was just like business as usual, helping. You seen the rigs from last time. I don't know if they're the same ones, if they're like the same rigs touring around all over the place, but it was nice. I gave the rig a little tap on the seat, like if you would tap an old horse or some shit. I don't know. Like, hey, Betsy, it's good to see you again.
It's okay, girl.
You got it in.
Kind of like a superstitious thing.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I did get to try. I snuck in a few sessions in between things when I knew everyone was busy, and I was like, you know what? I'm loading up Spa. I'm going to take this competition car, this Red Bull competition car around Spa and see how I stack up against these aliens.
Mm-hmm. So did Spa look nice to you?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, you feel right at home, but you just notice the trees more. You're like, dang, the Ardennes, yes.
You've played a lot of all of the GTs, and so it's okay if it's hard to tell because time has passed, but would you say that the Spa for GTSport looks like an update of GT5, GT6, or is it more or less the same? Did you notice any particular differences?
Yeah, I had to shake my perspective a little bit because I sat down and I was like, yes, this is very familiar, because you're so used to GT5s, and GT5, they killed it. It was great. It looked better than it should have, really. So you sit down on this and it's like similar lighting, but that's the only similarity. It's like a style thing, that classic GT kind of clinical style.
Okay.
But then you start noticing all the people on the side of the track, inside the paddock. You start noticing all of the trees, the stands being much more detailed, the curbing being much more detailed, and then also the new stuff that wasn't in the previous iterations, like bollards, green bollards, like Le Mans style green bollards or whatever. Those things have, people call them pylons, some people call them
like braking markers, that sort of thing. Apex markers. Probably noticed like foliage that moves with the wind of the cars, which I think is specific to GTSport and hadn't seen that before.
Yeah.
The car rushes past and the wake of it will like blow flowers flat on the ground for a second.
Well, first thing I did was hit those things, break them.
Excellent. You got to find out what's destructive, right? Because some of those things have mass. And people who use apex cones might find that if they hit the apex cone and it goes on track, it's visible to them and it's solid to them, but it's invisible to everyone else. So it's kind of a hazard.
Yeah. They are. You never know who can get caught up in the next one.
Yeah.
But I would, before continuing on, I did want to stop to congratulate the people who had a success in New York. So super congrats for Nations Cup to Igor Fraga.
Mm-hmm. Who just won at Imola again in European Formula 3. That guy's on a roll.
Yeah, amazing job in Formula 3. Very competitive series. He's showing insane pace in places he's never been, so it's looking up in more ways than one for Fraga for sure.
Yep.
And I think we're all happy to see him succeed in all of the things that he's doing, man. And so the other side of the weekend was manufacturer series, and it was great to see Mercedes finally clinch an event in the way that they did. So
we had Ant and Bernal and Cody Lakovsky for Mercedes. Those guys drove brilliantly, all three of them.
Yeah, it was cool watching the Interlagos race, seeing how each driver kind of handled their compound. A big props hugely to Bernal for his run on the softs, man. He was a cut above because he had to fight off a lot of buzzing hornets around him, so to speak. And yeah, that was a treat watching that. And of course, big ups to my man Adam Suswillow. It was amazing to finally get to meet that dude. 10 years in the making. We've been playing GT5 since GT5.
That's cool.
Came out. We're doing leagues. Just so much racing. And he was always the big badass, insane time. Guy would make you cry with his times kind of dude. So it's cool to get to meet him. And he put on such an amazing show, man. Like both in his personal race, the one in Fuji, And then also, obviously, in the final race at Interlagos, it was just intensely good.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. Making those online friendships that last through camaraderie and competitive thrills. To finally meet someone like that in person is just great. It's sort of even though the friendship had solidified before, it's just like this further sort of you're casting the friendship into a mold, and now it is like this beautiful finished product. Now that you've met in person, that's a special privilege.
Yeah, man, and that's why I'm excited for you to go to Austria firstly. And so you can, so your wave can crash up against the other side of the Gran Turismo world, the other regions.
Yep.
We're gonna have a great time, and I think they're all gonna love you, and you're gonna find your particular buddies that you'll click with hard and start, drinking too much with. So.
What are you suggesting?
Austria is full of great beer, and you need to take advantage of that.
Yes, it is. Oh, man. I lived in Germany for a couple of years, so I can't wait to go back and have some Wiener Schnitzel, some proper Hefeweizen. It's culinarily going to be quite the delight, and certainly the culture I am quite a fan of. And there's going to be a lot of great guys there. And in fact, several of the West Coast participants, Dodge Lamb and Outlaw Quadrant and TRC Stagger, and I think Ant as well. 5 of us are going to be all on the same flight from SFO to Munich. So many a beverage will be had together, I think.
Yeah, and y'all worked hard to make that happen too. It wasn't, you guys had to make that happen.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, Gran Turismo paid for it, and they're amazing and all of that. But initially, they just gave you your tickets, and you guys could have just said, "Okay, I'll fly separately." But it's always nice when you ask and you receive. So all you guys had to do was ask, and that's how nice they are.
Totally,
so.
Dude. I can remember days not long ago where that sort of simple initiative would rack my anxiety just too much. It's amazing what just a little courtesy along with a little bravery can do for results in that way.
Exactly. Yeah, man. Definitely looking forward to hearing back, doing the podcast afterwards, hearing about your experience from there.
It's going to be a bitchin' Camaro. I'm going to be, I'll have a lot of Instagram posts. I'll have, I think, what is it? Periscope, I think. That's the live streaming thing that you can do from your phone through Twitch or Twitter. So, at Roadbeef and OG Roadbeef, I'll definitely be having a lot of those things shared. So keep an eye on it, and I'll try not to be too obscene. I promise no nudity unless Armin forces me to.
Yeah, and I paid Armin off, so it'll happen.
Damn it. All right, well, I have nothing not to be proud of, so just deal with it. Oh, man. So let's get back to New York, my friends. There's some questions that I've got for you. I think that everyone's attention has been around the Igor versus Mikhail Hizal incident at Eau Rouge. And I want to levy that. I think the 5-second post-race penalty was actually fair because it wasn't hugely over the line what Igor chose to do with trying to break the rhythm of Mikhail behind him, but it was over the line enough that it required some kind of penalty. And if Lightning didn't have to save fuel or whatever and wasn't just over 5 seconds behind you, probably would have gotten the victory and deserved to get the victory. But it's certainly been a point of controversy with many different opinions of whether or not there should have been a penalty at all. We've had real life racers saying like, "Oh, this is a regular thing we do," and like GT3 class cars will lift a little bit at or through Eau Rouge and throw people off so that they lose all their momentum and we keep the position before we get the stablo at the top of the Kemmel Straight. If you are willing to, aside from the steward's viewpoint, just as a racer, just as Eddie the Wardez Gomez, as we all know you and love you, what's your personal opinion?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that these sort of things get blown up as much as they do. Because if you do it in a lobby race, obviously it's no big deal. But when you're on a stage like this one, to me, it was a much more of a mental sort of. It was an emotional reaction from most of the people because you expect the sort of thing from a person that wants to win as much as Igor does, and it's something everyone can respect and look to as an ideal. But when you're on the other side of it, it can be really tough, and it's to me. If it happened to me, I just would have been like, "Damn, I should have seen that coming." I still would have asked, like, why didn't it go down like that if I was Mikhail? But obviously I'm not, and obviously there's more to it than that particular isolated incident because there had been a lead up of maybe built up pressure that was, that kind of almost blew up at that moment. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's like when you have that many P2s, it can get really annoying, but yeah, it's an unfortunate thing. I don't personally, since it is a sim, I don't buy into the whole thing where it's like, oh, if it had been a real race, this could have been an incident that led to crazy injury or death. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of a cop out because like if it were real, I think you wouldn't be able to drive those cars in that way. I mean, there's a lot of questions that fall off from that perspective if you're trying to nitpick or cherry pick that particular aspect of it. But I think it would have been to me it was a game of chess, right, where Igor knew what was coming and he was trying to avoid the pass, but he did it in a really close, kind of in an ugly way. I wouldn't say dirty, I don't think he expected it to go down in that way, but yeah. It happened, and you can't. Just personally, I would never advise I would never advise doing any sort of lifting going into Rouge, but like the thing that he did before, where he lifted at La Source, turn 1, and let Mikhail get by, and then go around. I think that's pretty much where you want to play it. But it's one of those decisions where you just never know how someone's going to react. So I wouldn't even leave. If I was Igor, I wouldn't have tried it there. Maybe after Radeon, once you're over the hill and everything, maybe do it up there and see how it goes. But yeah, I think it was very unexpected, not advisable. But at the same time, stuff like that happens in racing where a guy will go for some crazy late move and you just got to deal with it on track. And the way that Mikhail got so upset that he kind of just threw in the towel, that also made it really unfortunate. So I think it's up to you to react in a way that's not detrimental to your race, and I think everyone can learn from the incident. And for sure. I just don't like how divisive it's going. I don't like how it's made further division between regions.
It's certainly
going into
it's crystallized like region. A ton of salt, across South America and Europe. Those guys really are like the big fans are kind of, they were for a time, like, in the first 48 hours were calling for blood. A little too ridiculous of reactions. But I hear you, and I'm of the opinion that maybe Igor was too good with his defense in such a way that the strength of his defense just made it too obvious. And I agree with you that if he had perhaps lifted after Radeon and it was on the Camel Straight, in such a way to just unsettle when was Hizal going to pull out from the draft to overtake, force him to pull out a little bit sooner than expected, and maybe Igor holds the inside line into Stabilo or whatever. No, not Stavelo. I'm messing up my corner names, but at the top of the Camel Straight. Yeah. Then that could have had like the same result. Or what if Igor had just decided, I'm not going to play any games, period, and just drive as fast as I freaking can and hope that the aero wash effect from, every corner prior to Sector 1 is enough to keep him off my back is enough. There's a lot of arguments that you can make either way. I wonder if after the lap previous where he, being Igor, had pulled aside after Losaurus and let Hizal go fast or go past him to get then the immediate draft to sort of secure his overtake. I wonder if, like, after that lap, he's like, okay, Mikhail knows what I'm going to be up to. If I do it again, then perhaps he's going to be the one that lifts at Eau Rouge and deny me the run-up Camel Straight. Perhaps he was trying to play like the meta game of anticipating the anticipation, and that might have done him in and caused him to then decide to be almost too deliberate with his lifting going up the Eau Rouge. There's a lot of possible scenarios and reasonings behind it. Ultimately, though, it was just a little too obvious of a move.
Well, here's the thing: is racing is like a dance. It's like a fight or whatever. You learn how to deal with your partner over time. You learn their style. You learn all kinds of stuff. We don't have the luxury of doing a whole career of karting or a whole career of junior formula racing where right. For example, someone like Bottas and Ricardo, they had a lot of time to get to know each other when they were racing and Formula Renault and all this stuff leading up to F1. But these guys, they're being thrust into this racing environment and they're learning each other's styles live in person on a huge stage with a lot of focus on them. Mm-hmm. So to put it in a weird example, Mikhail and Igor were fighting, and maybe Igor wanted to punch. Maybe Igor wanted to go for some punch to the forehead, and instead he hit him in the eye, and everyone's like, "Hey, that's an eye gouge," mm-hmm. and they're all like, "He must have done it on purpose because now he can't see that well out of his left eye, so it messes him up for the rest of the fight." Mm-hmm. But there's an aspect of mental. They're definitely I know Igor on a superficial level. He's a great kid. He's super nice, and obviously when you're racing, it's different. But I don't think there was malice behind the thing. I feel like he's just maybe too used to a certain kind of driver being behind him, and that he maybe assumed that Mikhail would have seen what he was going to do coming.
Yeah, like he was assuming that he was going to have to take it to the next level.
And on Mikhail's side, I wouldn't say that he needs to expect something like that either. I'm just trying to illustrate where the mental, where the mental state may be going into. Because when the pressure is this high, man, it really changes people, and some people react differently. So you got to be aware of that. And Mikhail, now that he knows, he said some stuff on Twitter to the effect of now that I know how you race, I'm gonna try to adapt, and I'm gonna come back and completely overtake you he feels that now that he knows how Igor is, that he can one up him and own him on track. Mm-hmm. And so Igor is also gonna have to realize he kind of ran out of tricks, right?
Right, it's showing your hands, maybe perhaps too early.
True. So they're both going to have to adapt. And Igor has more experience, so Mikhail's got to realize that as well. And I think you get salty at first, but it makes you grow as a driver, as a person, and all of that. So I think it's nothing but good. It was a little controversial for Gran Turismo in general, but I think there's no... that old saying, there's no such thing as bad publicity. Mm-hmm. It definitely holds true here and a lot more. So, for example, my perspective, I check different forums. I check Twitter and all that stuff. But one of my favorite places to look at to see reaction is the Gran Turismo subreddit, because the Gran Turismo subreddit is, like I've talked about and complained about in the past, it's mostly about trading pictures of new liveries or whatever.
Right.
But I haven't seen as many threads pop up about the FIA events than I did when as soon as the incident happened, like so many people were saying, "What do you guys think of the Hizal incident?" And they weren't just referring to, because previously they would only say stuff like, "Oh, the FIA tournament had some crazy racing in it. What do you guys think?" But now they're saying they're citing specific names, citing specific driver incidents and stuff like that, which excited me. So that was cool.
Right. It kind of like increased the minimum level of required interest so the conversation can be furthered.
Yeah.
I hear you.
But the bad thing was, it seemed like Kaz wasn't, like, he didn't take it very well. He didn't like on Twitter he made I don't have it in front of me, so
it was like, I want all victories to be great victories, or something to that effect.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And he was bummed out, man. Rightfully so. To me, he has an idyllic take on what racing should be, and he's trying to foster a very specific type of competition. And to see like his boys, so to speak, kind of have an incident, and for them to,
it's like he wants it to be cutthroat but romantic, and like ruthless but respectful, and the balance can't be achieved, but it's certainly going to be difficult.
Yeah, I think he'll be okay. He's a big boy for sure. It's just that I don't know. I can't completely, I don't know what his headspace was, or what he may have been disappointed in something altogether different. But I think we could all agree that it had something to do with the incident and the way that the competitors were treating each other after it. So.
Yeah, maybe it might have been the lingering emotions that kind of caught him off guard. But certainly, it's like there's so much to be learned from not just the incident, but like the aftermath. And it certainly excites me for Austria, and I hope these guys aren't going to be crappy to each other. I would like to think that there's still going to be some mutual respect, because in the end they're both top flight competitors and they've both learned things from each other, and what sort of doors that unlocks to possible competitive scenarios in Austria, it's going to be exciting to find out.
For sure. I don't know if Igor's going to be in Austria.
Time for Roadbeef to step it up.
Yeah, dude, I have ultimate faith. But, well, you're not going to be in nations for Austria.
Yeah, I guess not. But, maybe I can. I'll spike someone's drink and then I'll take their place.
Right.
It's like, Armin, you've done enough racing, dude. Yes, my name is Stagger. I'm definitely, Armenian from Southern California. It's close enough, right? It's only 600 miles away.
You could definitely pull it off, I think. But wow, yeah, that was quite a little tangent. Going into the the Higor incident.
Excellent. That's excellent. The Higor incident. I'm wondering, the streamers, Super GT, as well as WTF1, they were at New York City. WTF1 particularly, were they planning to like write an article, or were they more so just sort of like tag-alongs with intentions to write articles for future events? Did you get kind of much of a strategy from them?
For sure, yeah. I love talking to those guys about it because they're so excited to be there. GT's doing a great job. Polyphony and Sony are doing a great job of raising awareness of the game by bringing in the right people. And WTF1, if you haven't checked it out, they're kind of a more like Generation Z centric media outlet for F1 and racing in general. So especially, or not especially, but they definitely do cover sim racing a lot, mainly F1 esports. So to bring them in for their take on things, wine and dine them, was definitely a smart move. They were very excited to be there. I had interesting connection with Matt Gallagher, the host of WTF1, because I was in Austin 28 last year. Well, yeah, I was there last year, but I think it happened in 2017 where he interviewed me for the show, or for the channel. and they quizzed me, and I got every single question right. They were trying to make it. It was a segment to the effect of like, "Oh, American F1 fans don't know much," and like 90% of the guys on the video didn't, but me and this other dude knew our shit. So the only thing I got wrong was Max Mosley. I forgot Max Mosley's name. I just said, I was like, BDSM, Nazi party. But I couldn't get his name.
You got all the tags right. You just missed the title.
Exactly.
That's all. It's close
Look
enough.
him up.
You know, you would have been able to find him if that were like a YouTube search quiz.
Exactly. But so it was cool. I saw him on the shuttle bus, and I know he actually remembered me, so that was cool. But afterwards, for the rap party, talking to him, he was like, "I'm a part of the family, mate." He was like Super GT, Gallagher, the other people. They felt so welcomed. They felt so immersed. I think we all had a hand in that. You know, that was Sony and Polyphony could have sent those, brought them over to New York, and it was up to us. Like if we hadn't welcomed them the way that we had and all that, I think they wouldn't have been as moved by the whole experience. But we all had a hand in helping to make sure those guys were welcome and feeling like we really wanted them to be there, as we did, and they had a great time.
That's cool. It feels like it's really ramping up for the second year. And there was another very large corporate participants in the form of Michelin tires.
Well, let me just say, man, the Michelin man, insane drinker, dude. He's shot after shot.
With all those rules, I would expect him to be.
Yeah, and he sounds like every time he walks, it just sounds like a bunch of tires rubbing up against each other.
Boom, 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 boom. That's amazing. So, did you get any kind of inside information as to they're obviously they've invested in at least like a baseline of sort of just a billboard sponsorship of like Michelin will show up when you're like in a pit stop or whatever. But are they also going to do what Yokohama did with GT6 and try to help PD with like a new physics/tire model? Do you know anything of that sort of information?
Yeah, all I know, unfortunately, is what was stated in the presentation.
Okay.
Beyond that, we weren't really...
And thus concludes this episode of Gran Turisbros.
Sorry. But I think they want to do some cool things with the partnership, and it's just, I think, been birthed. So the first showing of it was the graphics during the tire stops and stuff. Okay. But going from there, I think it'll be maybe a thing. And just don't take this out of context, because I said maybe, and I said I don't know for sure. But I expect GT7 to have more fruits, that are results of the partnership.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you can tell they have their mind in the right idea. How like in Gran Turismo Sport, graphically at least, we have chunks of rubber and road debris sort of gathering offline as the race progresses. So they know that tires do this thing called degradation. They understand that temperature has a role to play in blistering and all sorts of things like this, compound differences and sidewall flex, and if they are if they are aiming to get the just the realism turned up yet another notch to try and rival something of like a PC simulator, then I'm certainly all for it. And what better company than Michelin, who I've worked at a Porsche dealer for 6 years, and I worked at independent Porsche repair shops for like another 6 years before that. And in my experience, Michelin are second to none when it comes to build quality of the tire and the consistency of the product that they make. So I'm very excited for the future collaborative efforts and the results that they may bring.
Yeah, tires are extremely difficult. It's a black art, man. And David Kamer, or however that's said, Kamer. He's iRacing like chief kind of coder designer, and he a lot of the time he spends is just trying to crack the code, the matrix kind of code of getting tire physics right. And that's what Kazunori mentioned during that presentation is that the tires are always, surprisingly to them, the most difficult aspect of trying to simulate real life racing in a video game.
Totally.
So there's a lot to it, and I would see, like, to me, the big sign of progress in GT would be seeing tire temperatures on 3 points of the tire.
Yeah, for sure. Inside, out, middle, and outside.
Yeah,
totally.
That'd be huge. And tire pressures as well, which I think GT should tackle.
Tire pressures have been absent since the birth of GT, which is interesting. Yeah, it's always been said you can change everything else, but you can't change tire pressures.
But the way that I read the statements in the presentation was that, especially in this one point that Kaz noted, where he kind of desperately said, like, we, and then obviously, this is a caveat here because I heard, translator-san saying it. I don't know Japanese, but he mentioned that they needed help with the tires in a way of like, please help us. We need someone to help us with the tires. Mm-hmm. So they're looking around, and hopefully Michelin has some stuff because, he also mentioned in this presentation about how when Kaz drove cars in real life, like the Nürburgring or the many events that he's done, he mentioned that Michelin tires were the shit, bro. Mm-hmm. Always the best. Always the ones that you had that were just, the operating range was wider than other tires. Like, and if you don't know what operating range means, it's basically just the tires, have a temperature that they run best in, and sometimes it's a narrow window where it'll be maybe like 40 degrees, and then it could go up from there or down depending on the manufacturer and all that. Yep. And he was saying that Michelin's always been great about that you can push them, and they're very easy to push, and they can last a long time and all of that. So mm-hmm.
Totally, it is, as you say, a black art. When tires are half rubber and half plastic these days, you got to consider the metal structure, the sort of interwoven metal strands that are in there of different materials of steel and titanium and who knows what else. Those all have a very specific heating and expansion properties, and that all goes into sort of the frequency of the tire, because when you try to figure out how to make it last as well as simulate it, you don't have just 1 or 2 or 3 oscillations going in the tire. You have dozens. You've got all the suspension components, the bushings that have give and make their own oscillation, the brake disc as it heats and cools changes its own frequency of oscillation, the wheel itself, not to mention driver induced oscillations of your hands on the steering wheel and how that force transmits through the steering rack and the tie rods, and as you go over bumps, further oscillations are introduced to the tire. So accurately not only coping with this in the real life but also replicating it in the digital life has got to be a crazy mountain to surmount.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, and it's hard to be picky and choosy with what elements you were wanting to replicate in the game, and which is why I think their approach has been so sort of static over the years, because maybe they figure, we could put in tire pressure or whatever, but it won't relate to the rest of the tire model in a realistic way, so why even bother until we really get it right?
Sure, they want to offer customization, but also want to deliver a consistent product. That's a difficult balance.
For sure, and especially when you have people making their whole, it's interesting, the GT community over the years, because you see certain guys that hang around Facebook posts or GTPlanet, what have you, and some of the guys have made it their entire digital life dedicated to one feature. One guy will be like, please give us Spa, or please allow Canada, Quebec to compete, or please let us have tire pressure, and that's all they care about seemingly.
Yep.
Or throttle mapping with Outlaw,
totally,
and yourself. So these are things that all need to be addressed, but it's a battle, and you definitely never know what you're going to get and what's in the pipeline, what their priorities are.
For sure, that's probably a cast for another time, and we've probably covered it a little bit, but nevertheless, it's a topic, since it's unresolved, we can continue to discuss the minutia of those things, and why exactly isn't throttle mapping being addressed. Perhaps it's an equalizer between those who use wheels and those who use D-pad. But there's got to be a ton of decisions that are made behind the scenes that we can only guess upon. And to make, I think the important thing is to not make any like absolute conclusions on these things, because how can we know for sure? But it is certainly fun to speculate.
It definitely is, and I think there'll be a few surprises coming in as far as the evolution of GT goes. This partnership with Michelin really made me excited because I've always been a huge fan of Michelin and what they do. Their tire technology is almost second to none. Maybe Bridgestone, Yokohama is close, but they've been in the game for so long. They like it's a black art, and it's very proprietary as well. Like they don't share secrets. And even in F1, when the races would be over or practice sessions would be over, they would have Michelin would have a team of guys going up and scooping up all the rubber so they can make sure no one else gets it, first of all, and then secondly, so they can study it. Yeah. And yeah, man, it's crazy. So I was excited to hear about the partnership.
The post-race Michelin Zamboni, just going out there and collecting like the rubber tidbits. That's a funny visual. So we got this new update 1.43, and we don't have Spa yet, but we at least have a wet Red Bull ring and a few new cars. I'm wondering. I've only driven once with the wet stuff, but do you have an opinion? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm glad they finally put it in. It's been a long time coming, but it's really fun to kind of have a single track to sort of have fun with it. To me, it just feels like someone's gone out and sprayed a track. They dumped a bunch of water on a track because it's not very, it's not progressive or anything. It's static,
Right,
so.
Right. Water's not like flowing across it.
Yeah, one thing, a lot of people aren't getting this, they're getting a false impression about this wet weather driving in GT Sport because they're trying it out with the real grip, or to the grip modifier. It's set to not real. I forget what the other one's called. So if you set it to low, it feels too grippy. So you make sure that it's set to real. Otherwise, you're going to be like, oh, I can use slicks. It's like, yeah, because your modifier isn't set up right. Mm-hmm. But I had a lot of fun with the karts, trying that out. It is extremely difficult. But it definitely looks really good, which we expected. It's an improved feel from GT6. Not as ice skatey. It's more predictable. But the skill gap is still large, like between drivers and cars, and curbs are instant death, which was kind of fun. Mm-hmm. Certain cars. But yeah, I had fun. I always like the challenge of wet weather driving. It's always been something that you feel like you can get a leg up on, as the great equalizer or whatever. Totally. What's your take on GT Sport's iteration or version of it?
It is an improvement from GT6 for the differences in grip, particularly between the pavement and the curbing. And
the surfaces.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I did notice that there is a finer detail in grip levels and sort of like grip curves in relation to slip angle. And if you stay within, a narrow, let's say, I think it's like 6 to 8 degrees, if I'm to guess, slip angle, sort of, inducing some understeer, not really trying to kick the car out. The car feels manageable, and through the force feedback, you can, with a tactile feedback, you can feel where the grip kind of starts and it ends. And beyond that range, the car just sort of falls off a cliff and it kind of hydroplanes as soon as it starts to kick sideways, which I like, and it is more realistic because once you've got the wheels turning sideways against water, they're brushing the water out of the way in sort of a different vector, and you do get more of like the tire standing on top of the water instead of digging in and pushing the water out of the way. That is a realistic component, so I have a lot of appreciation for that. I'm disappointed that we only have it on the Red Bull ring, but I think that's probably more limited to just, available manpower for programming, as well as, perhaps PS4 processing limitations and, download size limitations, because I'm sure it's not just a track overlay. It's like basically a completely new track file that they've had to make with the differing grip levels. It's just like when you're texturing something for like a Quake or whatever. You've got to maybe the polygon positions are the same, but all of the constituent calculations that go into like what is more solid than the next polygon are different. So it's like starting from scratch almost, essentially just from a wireframe up. So I bet that takes a ton of time for them to make. Hopefully they'll have maybe something more adaptive in the PS5 where they can just do a flip of the switch and a polygon is affected by a secondary sort of like overlay rain polygon system, so that they don't have to make, two versions of each track just to have wet tracks. Hopefully that won't be the case, because that will certainly be very limiting.
Yeah, that's definitely true. It's just a drawback to this super fidelity graphical quality that we have now. It takes a lot more time to make it consistent. I have a friend, he's on PlayStation, or he's one of my random PlayStation Network friends, yes? His name's Frogman Lego. Big ups to him. Definitely add him on the PSN if you want to have some tasty tidbits dropped into your inbox here and there. But he let me know about this rain texture that he found on Sardinia, which they let slip.
That's interesting.
It's I forget which corner it is, but I have the screenshot, and you can definitely see that they mistakenly allowed the rain version of the track in like a super small, maybe like a 2-foot square area near a barrier, and this eagle-eyed dude found it. So it's just little by little they want to. So Sardinia, if I were to put money down, I would expect to be the next one.
Okay.
And the newer tracks, I think, would be first to get the rain. I did try Spa, and there was no rain at the time that I tried it. There was no rain setting. Just so everyone knows.
Can you remind me, because it's been a while, but the GT6, when you had rain selected, was it like a percentage of water on track, or was it just like one setting?
Yeah, I don't quite recall. I remember GT5's more, but I think it was the same. But there was one value. There were two values, and it was a percentage out of 100. One of them was like likelihood of rain, and the other one was like intensity, I think. Mm-hmm. So it didn't allow you to actually define how much rain there would be. But yeah, to be honest though, at this point, it's been so long since rain's been a thing in GT that I'm kind of like, it's cool. I mean, I did like having it around for novelty in GT5. Mm-hmm. Every once in a while, you'd want to shake things up and have a rain race, but not many after the novelty wore off, not many people were like insistent on doing rain races very often. Mm-hmm. There are definitely exceptions to that. I know there were some crews, some forum threads that were all about rain, and like the hydro homies got together and ran around and around, and comfort hards and super formulas, all that. Yeah, I'm enjoying seeing people challenge themselves though. That's cool, doing crazy combos.
Should I have a portfolio of suggestions to take to the next event, to just basically like corner someone at PD and be like, okay, you need to do this with photo mode, and you need to have these tracks, and you need to fix the throttle mapping, damn it.
I think if you focus your suggestions and you make it, because a lot of people make the mistake of trying to talk to them about a few different things, I think. But if you focus it down to like photo mode stuff,
okay, or
the throttle mapping thing, depending on who you're talking to, you might have more success. Because especially if you talk to the photo mode, if you talk to a few people about it, then
Cool. Yeah, I hear you. Just keep it simple, stupid, and and certainly deliver it like, okay, this is already awesome. Here's how it might be even more awesome. Would you like to know more? Okay. Well, we'll keep that in mind. Certainly barraging them would be uncouth, and I can imagine they might be justifiably annoyed by that, so I'll be careful. But if the opportunity arises, listeners, know that I have your best interests in mind, and we'll see what we can accomplish.
Yeah, I think that's a smart way to go about it. But a lot of the PD staff are, restrained. They're a little introverted or whatever. Some of them aren't so much, but they're also busy a lot of the time. So
Right.
You pick your battles. You talk to who you can talk to, and I think you'll be good,
Yeah.
man.
It seems like
It'll be interesting.
it seems like they're all going kind of full throttle ever since last year. Certainly last year they were like, we don't really have time for much right now, aside from this. Did you get the impression that they were more relaxed or less relaxed at New York City compared to Vegas?
Yeah, more relaxed, I would say. They're definitely hitting more of a rhythm. Last year was very new, and things were changing all the time, and the unexpected issues would arise a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
So Toyo-san was super cool. So his name is Toyo Teramoto. Sorry, he is pretty much the lead of the competitive stuff, and we have him to thank for the great success that the live event tournament procedures and all that have gone.
Mm-hmm.
So he's super cool, super nice, and yeah, he was pretty relaxed. Anytime there was a little issue, he would fix it right away. Anything we alerted him to, he took seriously. But he was never like visibly stressed and stuff. And yeah, he had great communication with everybody, from what I could tell. Because a lot of the stuff, like I had him in a earpiece, and we had walkie-talkies in our ears, and he would speak Japanese most of the time. But every once in a while, I would understand what was going on, and I'd hear them speak Japanese, and then in the middle of it, they'd say Lexus, and then somebody's name, and I'd be like, oh, it's the wrong name on that rig, so I'd go over and fix it. And yeah, he was very nice, and all the guys that were involved in the replay video switching, so switching between perspectives and all that, those guys were all really on it, and yeah, they just they seemed like well disciplined and super serious about it. So, but still having fun.
Well, I can't wait, dude.
Yeah, I think, and if you get to, you are going to get to World Finals. Let's confirm that, right?
I'm not sure. We'll know Sunday. We've got like 6 days left.
Well, I was just going to say, because I'm really hoping for the best in that when it comes to that. But World Finals would also be a great time, because they're to talk about suggestions and feedback, because at that point they'll kind of have the tournament behind them for this year.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, it's pretty cool to qualify at least for just one event again after the amazing experience of last year, which had some mild personal heartbreak. Flubbing qualifying in the first race, but whatever. Yeah, it's cool to go back again, and that you've sort of graduated to this administrative capacity is befitting, I think, of your intelligence and interest level. And gosh, dude, it's cool that the Gran Turisbros are experiencing this from both sides now.
Yeah, but I still definitely want to compete.
It's like I'm outside the castle and you're inside the castle. And we have to go to another castle.
Yes. We gotta find all the princesses. But I have one foot in each side of things. I definitely want to compete next year. I know they're gonna go even bigger with the next year, but next year is also the third year of their experiment. So everything has to go well.
The FIA collaboration.
And then it'll continue. Yes.
I think it will. I get the impression the FIA are pretty impressed with it. Ultimately, and I don't mean this as a derogatory means, but it's just the way the world works. But money talks. So I think that the popularity of this whole venture is increasing, and I'll do my best to try and contribute to it in such a way that we attract more positive publicity in what ways that I can. But I also want to experience some fun for myself, and what can we do but just try to have as much fun as possible, and hopefully it's enough.
I think so. I think that's a great way to end the episode as well. Put a great ribbon on the whole thing.
Totally. Well, for those listening, the Austria World Tour is just 2 weeks away, less than 2 weeks. I think it's 12 days. I'll be flying out on today's Monday night, the 2nd of September. I'll be flying out a week from tomorrow, heading over to Austria. So we're getting close, dude. And then Tokyo's October 24th, 25th. World Finals, I think, is November 23rd, 24th. So we've got like 3 events, back to back to back for each month. And certainly when I return, we're going to cast, and I'll tell you guys all about it. I'm going to want to hear your opinion, Eddie, on like all of my experiences. And I'm certainly going to have like lots of befuddled questions that only you can answer for me. I look forward to it very much, my man.
Oh, it's gonna be great. I'm so glad you're gonna be like Austria's gonna be a great one just because you're gonna meet everyone, and then hopefully your races go well, and then going from there it's just gonna get even better and better. So I'm glad to have you. Like, it's such an asset, man. I can't thank you enough for being part of the show, and it's gonna be a really, really fun end of our year for the podcast. Or last quarter of the year for us is going to be just highlight after highlight, and it's going to be really fun to be on the journey with you throughout the whole way, man. Just helping in any way I can.
Absolutely, Absolutely, dude. It's a privilege. So thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you. Boom. There's episode 12. Thanks for joining us. Have a great evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you may be.
Mm-hmm. Peace out, fellas.
Peace out. Big kisses from Tristan.